Okay. All right. Well, welcome everyone. This is the last one. I know you're probably all grateful for this to be the last one. I know I am. It's been great. I've enjoyed putting these together for you and giving you all this information, but it'll be nice to move on to something else for a while. But if you do ever need any other kind of training or anything, reach out to us and let us know, and we'll be glad to help you out. Today, we're going to be talking about the Trade Act Participant Report, or as most of you know it by, is TAPR. The Grantee Reporting System, or GRS, as most of you are familiar with, especially on the fiscal. We do have some of the fiscal staff from the local areas on this presentation today, because the TAPR and GRS strictly, they're kind of geared more towards what they do in some aspects, because they do usually report the TAPR. So I did invite them to this, as well as the other field staff. We're going to talk about appeals, overpayments, fraud, and monitoring. It should not take the whole 2 hours. It's pretty short, just some basic information that you need to know about these particular topics. So what is the TAPR GRS? The Department of Labor, of course, is our funding agency, and they do require us to report quarterly data on participants who are in the trade program, and it's reporting that'll determine performance, outcome, and also the costs, and that's what the TAPR is for. It's for the specific costs for those trade participants that were expended each quarter. The reporting by each local area is done in IWDS, and that's through the upload of the TAA costs for the participants. And we'll go through how to do that in a little bit. So here's the reporting for the TAPR and the due dates. So Q1 is January 1st through March 31st. Of course, that report is due in IWDS by April 25th. Q2 is April 1st through June 30, and we need that report in IWDS by July 25th. Excuse me, I got like a frog in my throat today. And Q3 is July 1st through September 30th. That one, because of the way the trade funding is awarded, the end of the program year is September 30th for trade, unlike WIOA. The report for the TAPR costs is generally going to be due around November 10th in IWDS, give or take a day or two, because it is the final quarterly report for the trade program, and the grants do end on September 30th. And there's a little period of time where the LWIAs do have an opportunity to get in all the final costs and do all the final reporting for those grants. And they're in the process of closeout at that point. So we push this deadline back just a little bit, but it gives us a little bit of extra time then also to get all of the final reports submitted to DOL for those programs. And Q4 would be October 1st through December 31st, and that one is due January 25th in IWDS. So the Trade Act Participant Report, or TAPR, is uploaded to IWDS, and what it does, it reports the accrued costs that are paid in that quarter by participant. Something to keep in mind for the people who are working on this report and do the upload, those total accrued costs that are reported on that upload to IWDS for training, job search, and relocation, and those are reported differently. Each one would be reported separately if a person had all three. That must match, I mean must, it has to match penny for penny to the total on the TAPR report that's uploaded in IWDS. All of those costs in GRS, and I should have put GRS in here, the total accrued costs that are reported on GRS must match exactly that total on your TAPR report that's uploaded to IWDS. If it does not match, and you need to check this before you upload it, then you need to do a reconciliation and determine what the difference is and make any adjustments necessary. By the time you're reporting the TAPR, if you're doing it by the 25th of the month when it's due, you will not have the opportunity to update GRS anymore at that point, because once the 20th is gone, the reporting is shut down for that previous month in IWDS. So your adjustments would need to be made on the TAPR. If you have any belated refunds for any grantees or any participants or anything from a training institution or whatever for some costs, those do not get included on those TAPR uploads. You will need to contact Crystal Bigelow at her email address here for instructions on how to handle your specific belated refund. There's some different things based on which program year that belated refund is applicable to. So reach out to Crystal if you have anything like that. And a belated refund is if the grant has been closed out and you get a refund for something that was paid on that grant. So just in case you didn't know what that was. So what I want to do now is, before we switch over to appeals, I want to go through the document that shows how to actually do the TAPR. Okay. So here are the instructions on actually how you would go through this process of doing the TAPR. So on the IWDS main menu screen, you're going to click on the reporting menu down here off to the right. And then you're going to scroll on that screen until you see this TAA training costs header. And you will do an export initially to get the information on the participants in the system for your particular local area. So when you hit that export, it's going to bring this screen up for reporting criteria. You're going to put in your local workforce investment area number, select it from the drop down, and you're going to select the year and the quarter. And here are the information and when it's due by. The July 1st to September 30th on this thing says October 25th, but again, we've kind of pushed that deadline back because it is that final report for that. So you will put in the appropriate quarter information for the program for the year that we're working with. So it's calendar based on like current year. So 2021, 2022 would be the year for the quarter of January 1st through March 31st. Right now you have a report that's due on the 25th of January. That would be for 2021 quarter 4. So what you'll do is put your information in your OEA, the year, the quarter, and you can change this report format to the Excel extended. And when you do that and you tell it to view report, then this is the headers that come up on the spreadsheet that you will see on the Excel spreadsheet, and it will have a list of your particular participants that you have in the system. It'll list all of them on there, and then you will fill in the information for the cost amount per quarter and the cost type. It'll be either training, job search, or relocation. So as I said, under the headings, there will be the list. And then the system itself will enter the OEA, the year and the quarter that you selected on your report. And then the cost type will be either training, job search, or relocation, depending on what kind of cost you're reporting. And then you will add if you need to, or whatever, one of those training types if you need to. And then you will enter that cost amount per quarter. If a customer does not have a cost amount in that quarter that you have paid, you would just leave it blank or 0. I think it comes up zeros, but I don't remember for sure. So how do you get that cost amount per quarter that you'll enter on that spreadsheet? First thing you need to do is go to GRS, and the fiscal people know how to get to this screen. You're going to put in your grant number, and you're going to put in the cost reported from and through. So you're going to put the beginning of the quarter. So the report that's going to be due in January, on January 25th, you'll put in 10/20/21 through 12/2021. And then this training subtotal right here that comes up, that is the dollar amount that you have to match. So when you're doing that report, when you put in all of these costs for all of these participants here, this total cost amount per quarter that you have for all of those participants listed needs to match whatever this training subtotal is. So keep that in mind. If it doesn't match, you have to do the reconciliation to make it match. It has to match this number here. The TAPR is nothing more than a report by participant of these actual costs that you have as a total right here that you have reported in GRS. So once they do match, your totals do match, you've got all the costs in there by participant and they reconcile, then you can upload your file to IWDS to report those costs. And what you'll first need to do is that Excel spreadsheet that you have from IWDS, you'll save that file as a .csv file type on your computer. And it'll be an option on there when you do the save. And then to upload that report, what you'll do then is go back to this reporting menu down here where it says the TAA training cost. Initially, you did the cost export. You're now going to do a cost import. And when you do that, it will bring up this screen. You're going to click browse. You're going to go find that .csv file that you saved. You can double click the file, or I think if you click on the file name once and you can click open, I think it puts it in there. And then you'll click next and you'll follow whatever the prompts are on that screen. And that completes the process of uploading the TAPR costs in IWDS. Crystal does an initial review of it. She'll tell me if there's any issues between what's in GRS and the TAPR costs. And she'll kind of give me an idea of some things that she may have found. And if there's anything that we need to communicate with the OEs on those, then we will reach out to you if there's any discrepancies. And Crystal pointed out something to me that I said wrong. Sorry, I have this box wrong. This box is actually in the wrong place. It actually is this total cost column. So I apologize for that. That's my error. It does need to match whatever these costs are right here, not the balance column. I apologize. I'll fix that and send out a new document. I don't know why I did that. So thank you, Crystal. So it does need to match whatever these cost column are, not the balance. Did anybody have any specific questions on the TAPR itself and GRS on how to do that process? Okay, key point is they must match exactly, penny to penny. If they don't, then please do your reconciliation, make sure it matches before you do that upload. All right, so moving on. You know, I don't know if the fiscal people that are on with us, you're welcome to stick around for the rest of it. You know, there may be some information that's helpful to you at some point when you're working with the program staff. Probably some of the stuff related to overpayments. But if you want to drop off, that's fine. Just wanted to let you know there's not a lot more information, but the overpayment section may apply at some point if you want to stick around. So as we have covered before, all of the participants, if they have a determination for a benefit or a service, they do have appeal rights. The appeals information is in the Trade Final Rule Act 20 CFR 618, 525, and 820 paragraph E. Basically, the state must notify any participant in writing of any determination or redetermination for eligibility for a trade program benefit. And that is for each determination or redetermination. You've got to inform the participant of the reason for that determination or redetermination and of their rights for reconsideration or appeal. And it is done based on the manner in which they do determinations for unemployment insurance. All of that information, the appeals part is handled by IDES, all of the adjudication and everything. So, but we do work closely with them on those. If a participant does disagree with any kind of a determination, then that is when they would submit the request for a reconsideration or appeal. This here is the actual appeals language that is on our forms. It says, if you disagree with this determination, you may complete and submit a request for reconsideration appeal. A letter will suffice if you do not have an agency form. Your request must be filed with the Illinois Department of Employment Security, IWDS, within 30 calendar days after the date at the top of this letter. And it says this letter, but what it's whatever form that you're doing, you know, it's like the eligibility for, you know, there's the form 5 for the transportation. There's, you know, the application for ATAA, RTAA. You know, if you look at all of our forms, the appeals language should be on there if it's some sort of a determination of for a benefit or service. So it by saying, but it says letter, but it does also reference whatever the form is that is being completed. If the last day for filing your request is the day the IDS is closed, the request may be filed on the next day the IDS is open. Please file the request by mail, and it gives the IDS address, or fax to, and it gives the phone number to fax it to. Any request submitted by mail must bear a postmark date within the applicable time limit for filing. So that language is on all of our forms that have a determination on them, which is the majority of them. Appeals are handled at IDES, and there's an administrative law judge who does do those hearings and makes those determinations on any appeal that's filed. There is a letter that gets sent to the participant, the career planner, gets sent to state merit staff at Dceo that has information on a date or a time for any hearing that is scheduled. And usually those hearings are conference calls that are held with the participant, the administrative law judge, and the career planners. Dceo state merit staff usually do not participate in those unless it's necessary for some reason. I've been here for about 4 years now, and I've not had to participate in one yet. So Susan may have in the past, but we usually are not required to attend those, but we do get the information on them. Once that determination has been made by the administrative law judge, another letter is sent to the participant, the career planner, and Dceo state merit staff with the determination that was made by the ALJ. And based on the determination, it could require an IEP modification. If it does, then you'll follow that process. Generally, you usually just case note it and file it. Most of them don't require a modification to the IEP, but it is a potential thing that could happen. And now we're moving into overpayments. There's some guidance in the regulations at 20 CFR 618-832 for overpayments and penalties for fraud. It applies to all trade program years except for the 2021R. The guidance for those 2021R overpayments is found in TEGL 2420 attachment A. The 2021R just has to be different. So just some general information, like what do they mean when they're saying this in the language? A person. So when they say person, that can include to a participant, any other individual, an employer. It can be an entity or an organization, officers or officials, training provider, and officers and officials of that who bear any kind of individual responsibility for that overpayment. So a person can mean an organization, an individual. So just keep that in mind when they're talking about that it can be any one of these particular types. And for determinations and repayment, like if there is an overpayment, there will be a determination made, and it will state whether a repayment is required or not. So this is directly from the language. You know, if they make a determination that there has been an overpayment, someone got a payment for something that they weren't entitled to, then they will be required to repay that amount to DOL or the state, you know, as appropriate. There are requirements to waive such repayment. if, for some reason that the payment was made without fault on the part of the participant, and it would cause a financial hardship for that participant or their household for that repay, if we were forced to repay that amount of money. And then, here's a special thing for 2021 R participant, the state may waive repayment where requiring payment would be contrary to equity and good conscience. I don't know how that's a whole lot different than the financial hardship, but they made it different. The participants do have, or the person who's responsible for, they're accusing of having an overpayment, that person, they do have a reasonable opportunity to provide any kind of documentation or, information that can demonstrate that they were not at fault for that repayment. So they do have that opportunity. And if you what do they mean by financial hardship and fault? So a financial hardship does exist if the recovery of that overpayment would cause that person or their household the inability to pay for ordinary and necessary living expenses. They're not going to be able to pay their rent. They won't be able to buy food for their family or something like that. That would be a financial hardship. And fault. So when does fault exist? That is if a person makes a material statement or representation that caused the overpayment, and whether or not that person knew that that statement they were making or that representation was inaccurate. Did the person fail or cause somebody else to fail to disclose some sort of a material fact in regard to what caused the overpayment, resulted in it? Did they know that? Did the person know that they were not entitled to the trade payment? Did that overpayment result directly or indirectly from any act or omission of the person, or the individual had any knowledge that it was inaccurate, wrong, and whether there's been a determination of fraud by false representation or non-disclosure of a material fact. So what is a false representation or non-disclosure of a material fact? So there are penalties. So in addition to any penalty provided by law, the person will be ineligible for further trade payments if they are determined to have knowingly made or caused another to make a false statement or representation of a material fact, or knowingly failed or caused another to fail to disclose a material fact. So, there is, if they are at fault and it is determined that they have done something wrong, they've made a false representation, then if that is determined, then they will be ineligible for further trade benefits. So how do we notify them? There's a notice of determination, fair hearing, and finality. So, it's done by a court of competent jurisdiction. It says no repayment may be required and no deduction may be made until a determination is made. And there's been an opportunity for a fair hearing for that person. And it can't be done until that actual determination has become final. So, there may be overpayment established, but we can't do anything as far as getting that repayment until there has been a final determination by a court of competent jurisdiction. So for training, job search, relocation allowances, ATAA, RTAA, if that participant fails to complete training, job search, relocation, any payment that has been made for them as a part of them working towards completing that training or in that job search or relocation, that is not considered an overpayment. So if someone does quit training, like anything that's been paid to date, that is not considered an overpayment. And if they do fail to complete their training, job search, or relocation, the portion of the payment that is For the non-completed component, that is an overpayment. So if you've paid something for this current semester, like the spring semester for a participant, and they and it's after the drop dead date, you paid it, you can't get the money back, then that could be considered an overpayment for that participant. Any cost for the completed portions, like anything up through like December that was paid, that, like we said, is not an overpayment. So what is good cause? You see this good cause, if they've failed to do this or they don't complete with good cause. So it's basically if the participant acted diligently, but for some reason they were unable to complete because of some exigent circumstances, and it is determined on a participant by participant basis whether good cause exists. And overpayments, they either have to be recovered or waived according to the trade regulations. And then there's a special thing here for ATAA, RTAA. If the ATAA, RTA participant, if for like a given month, that those annualized wages that they've determined when they do their calculations, it's accurate and complete at the time that payment is made, then those are valid payments and those participants are entitled to them. So if something comes up later that maybe isn't the same as that, then that is not considered an overpayment, because at the time that determination was made to make that payment for that ATAA, RTAA individual, then that was considered a valid payment. So what kind of recovery methods are there for overpayments? There's a thing called offset. The state must recover it from any sums payable to a person under any federal UI law administered by the state or any other law that provides for the payment of unemployment assistance or allowance with respect to unemployment. That's supposed to be Ann. They will recover that overpayment from UI payable to that person, but it cannot be more than 25% of the person's weekly benefit amount for the weeks that they're eligible for those benefits. So what if there's fraud? So every state has to have a fraud detection and prevention plan, policy. IWDS does have a policy. Dceo also has a policy as well for fraud detection and prevention. And there's criminal penalties for fraud. If someone knowingly makes that false statement, not disclosing a material fact or causing someone else to do so, they can be imprisoned for up to 1 year and a fine, or both. And any kind of suspected violations, if you think someone has committed fraud, those have to be reported to the U.S. Department of Labor, Office of Inspector General, and we have a process known as the incident report in Illinois, and we'll cover how to do that in a minute. So any allegations regarding fraud, program abuse, or criminal misconduct in both trade and WIOA need to immediately be reported to Dceo, the Office of Employment and Training, which is us, the Department of Labor, Employment and Training Administration, Region 5 office, and the USDOL Office of Inspector General. And we do that through the incident reporting form. So how does this process work? So like if there is some sort of suspected fraud or alleged fraud or something like that. So what does the local workforce area do? They have to do a fact finding. They got to gather all the facts, all the evidence that they can about the allegation of the fraud. You're going to have to contact the participants. You're going to see if there's some sort of a misunderstanding. Is there any missing information that might clear up that allegation? You can contact the training provider, an employer, any other affected party that's involved in whatever the alleged fraud is. And if when you do that, the details of your fact finding are submitted in writing to Dceo following these procedures in our e-policy, Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act e-policy at 8.3.7.2 on WorkNet. And you also, if it's trade related, you have to notify the Dceo trade unit at Dceo as well. I will cover the incident report. I'll show you that in a few minutes. So you're also going to enter, as a career planner, you're going to enter a case note into IWDS regarding the fraud and any kind of supporting documentation. You're going to enter a potential suspension request status for that participant, and you'll follow the instructions provided in the previous trainings that we've done on potential suspension requests. That will immediately stop their TRA payments while that allegation is under investigation. So Dceo and DOL's fact finding. So DOL, Officer of Inspector General, will get the information. They make a determination as to whether they will, at the federal level, do the investigation, or if it will be done at a state level, and they will notify us in writing of which route they have chosen to go. If OIG elects to investigate the allegations, then Dceo will postpone that resolution until their investigation is complete. And if they have the state level do it, so Dceo, then there will be a special monitoring review that is initiated, or some sort of an investigation by the appropriate entities that need to be involved. And under some circumstances, Dceo shall have the responsible OWIA conduct the investigation. It just kind of depends on what the circumstances are surrounding it as to which organization will do the review. But generally, if Dceo does it, there will be a special monitoring review conducted. And if the allegation, of course, is a participant that's receiving WIOA or trade services, then the OWIA may suspend those services while that allegation is under investigation. And regardless of which entity, whether it's DOL or Dceo that completes that investigation, the fiscal unit staff that conduct our monitoring on a regular basis, they will monitor the status of all the fraud and abuse investigations to determine if there's any sort of disallowed costs and needs a recovery of costs for that allegation of fraud. So the resolutions, so once your fact finding is complete, there's going to be a final determination made by the conducting entity. The details that are discovered during monitoring review or any kind of investigation that's done, any actions will be taken to recover any disallowed costs, and final determinations need to be issued within 15 working days from the completion of that fact-finding process. If fraud is determined on the part of the participant, the person is disqualified from receiving benefits under the Act for his or her lifetime. So very important that you stress this to these participants. If for some reason, you think you want to commit fraud, just understand that you will be disqualified from any kind of benefits for lifetime for this program. The Dceo fiscal unit will follow up on incident reports. They'll ensure that any appropriate corrective action is taken. And Dceo fiscal unit will notify Dceo trade unit of any outcome of their review that they have conducted and any kind of activities that need to take place regarding that participant. And then the Dceo trade unit, if it's trade participant, will inform the OWIA and IDS of the outcome of the investigation and the fact finding. The OWIA will then inform the participant if services can continue or if the services will be ended. The OWIA will document all of that in the outcome in the case notes. And then IWDS will inform the participant of any unemployment insurance or TRA overpayment and the actions that will be taken by that agency. All right, so I want to go through the incident report to show you what it looks like. There's an incident report form, and then I also sent along the instructions for the incident report form as well this morning. Okay. So what it is, and this is all out in the ePolicy portal. You can access this through that. So you're going to list you're going to put the date that you're reporting this. The type of incident, is it fraud, gross mismanagement, misapplication of funds, misconduct, criminal activity, or waste? And allegation is against who? Is it a WIOA grant recipient, a WIA, a program participant, DOL employee, OET employee, sub-state grantee, other recipient, or other that may not be listed. So be a trade participant or something like that. And then you would list the specific individual. So like give their name, position of the employee, contractors, sub-recipients, telephone number, any other identifying data that you have about the particular participant or person the allegation is against. And location, okay, where did this alleged incident happen? Give complete names, addresses of organizations involved, any information you have regarding where it happened and what was the date and time of the incident or the discovery. What's the source of the complaint? Is it from an audit, a contractor, program participant, the public, investigative law enforcement agency, or other? How did you get the information for the complaint? Have you contacted any law enforcement agencies? If you have, then specify any information regarding that contact, who you contacted, the results, and anything like that regarding any law enforcement that's contacted. And who can provide any additional information? What are the names of the people, their position, job title, where do they work, what's the agency they're with, any information regarding anybody who can provide any additional information about the alleged incident. And then in number 9, provide any information, any details about the specific incident, what happened, why do you suspect it's fraud, why are you reporting this? And then the signature, the name and the signature of the person who's doing the reporting. It's pretty basic form. You can attach additional information that you may have to this form, that also has information about the incident. So like I said, there's a set of instructions on how to fill it out as well if you need that, but it's pretty simple. I had an OWIA that reported a suspected fraud to me one time, and I was like, so I gave the incident report, and they were able to fill it out pretty easily. There is a question. I'm wondering if all of the case notes written during the process of a fraud investigation should be marked confidential. Not necessarily, Kathy, because the people doing the investigation and potentially DOL at some point down the road, that may be needed for monitoring purposes. So I would not think it would need to be marked confidential unless there was some type of specific medical or personal type of information in there regarding that participant, anything that would need to be kept confidential for HIPAA laws or something like that. But other than that, there would need to be a record of the information regarding the investigation. So we're going to switch gears to the final topic for today is monitoring. There are audit and oversight requirements in the regulations. Of course, all organizations who receive funding from the federal government, states, local governments, nonprofit organizations, for-profit entities that receive, I put in your trade program funds because that is what we're specifically talking about is trade, but it is for all federal programs. They must follow any audit requirements. So this is just the audit requirements that are out there. And then there's monitoring and oversight requirements as well. So each recipient and subrecipient, we are a recipient, we at the state level are a recipient of funds from the federal government. You grantees, the OEAs, are subrecipients of us. So Any of those who receive funds must conduct regular oversight and monitoring of your program and any subrecipients that you have and contractors. And here's the requirements of where they're listed in the Trade Act and under the 2 CFR Part 200, which is the administrative requirements for all the programs. And then there are U.S. Department of Labor exceptions to those as well in the 2 CFR 2900. And basically why we have to do this, we have to determine that expenditures have been made against the proper cost categories, they're within the proper cost limitations that are specified in the Trade Act, the regulations, and any administrative guidance. Are they spending the funds like they're supposed to? We also need to do it to determine whether there's compliance with any other provisions of the Trade Act, the regulations or administrative guidance, and assure compliance with the 2 CFR 200 and DOL's exceptions at 2 CFR 2900. Determine compliance with all of the special requirements for non-discrimination, disability, equal opportunity requirements, and Assistive Technology Act. So there's a federal oversight level, and where that is, the Region 5 staff in Chicago, they will monitor the trade program in Illinois. They come and monitor us, usually about every 2 to 3 years. And what they do during that review is they will sample files from some LWIAs across the state. Usually they will pick 2, 3, or 4. Usually about 3 or 4 is what they generally pick, just a sample of files. At Dceo, they'll look at our trade-related policies and procedures. They look at payments for service benefits, for training, job search, relocation, travel and subsistence. They look at how we issue our trade grants to the local areas, what our process is. And then they will also review IWDS at the same time to review payments of benefits for TRA, unemployment insurance, and the ATAA, RTAA payments. And then they just review to make sure that we are in compliance with the program rules as well. So they basically review us just like we would review you. And there's state level oversight and monitoring. So the states must have a formal process for monitoring that reviews the compliance and participant files, makes sure that the trade program is being operated effectively and efficiently. It's designed to share any best practices that we may come across. We can identify and correct any deficiencies that we may find, and then address any staff needs in areas of training that might be needed as we're conducting the monitoring. I know we decided to do a lot of this training because I know we have a lot of new staff in the field. So that's kind of part of what we were doing with this training. What it requires is a minimum quarterly sample of 20 files to be reviewed as a part of our monitoring program, and we must include files from at least 2 certifications. So I don't know that we have failed to meet this except for maybe 1 quarter right at the start of the pandemic. I believe was the only quarter that we have not met this requirement. And they must cover, those 4 quarterly samples must cover 4 different areas of the state. Well, the way the monitoring schedule is set, they kind of go through different areas of the state through the various quarters. So the requirements are met through 3 different components at the state level. The first one is the Dceo programmatic and fiscal monitoring of the LWIAs. It's an annual event. As you'll get your letter from Tamika and that group that says, hey, we're coming out to monitor you. Here's what you need to send to us. So how they do their monitoring is through the automated compliance for monitoring events system. It's called ACME. That's how they conduct their monitoring. It's a set of questions based on the different component areas that they monitor. And they will review a sample of active and or exited trade participant files. They also do that for the WIOA files. They'll look at some payments, and they look at IWDS entries as a part of that review. It is conducted and completed by the Dceo's Fiscal Programmatic Monitoring Data Validation Unit, and any issues that are identified are communicated to the LWIAs through a formal monitoring findings letter process. And then the LWIAs need to respond to those issues that are identified in that letter. And also comply with the prescribed corrective action that is included in those findings letters. So the second component is a quarterly review of IWDS benefit payments of UI, TRA, and RTAA. How that is done is Dceo staff, the trade unit, will provide IWDS with a list of the names of the trade participant files that were monitored during the quarter. And then IWDS will review their systems and the participants to make sure that all of the payments and everything are in compliance. The third component is the Dceo Trade Technical Assistance Review. That basically is just the same as kind of a monitoring review. It's a little more informal. It's some active trade customer files. It is completed by staff in the trade unit. Generally, that is my responsibility to complete, but our wonderful trade unit staff, Crystal, Lori, and Susan have all been very, very helpful to me in completing these reviews. Since I've been here, they've been always willing to assist whenever needed to go on site or to review these files electronically. So I appreciate all of their help with that. What we will do is we will select a sample from the active participant files from the LWIS. They have a range of trade services being provided to them. And we have a form that we use that it contains the same questions that the ACME system monitoring instrument has on it. And how we notify you of any kind of issues that we find is just an informal process. Generally, it's we'll give you copies of things that we have found, and we will communicate usually through emails to say, hey, this is what we found. Can you please fix this? Or can you give us some more information and clarify this? So it's very informal. There are no formal findings letters that are issued as a part of this. If we do see a consistent recurring issue, it may be brought up to the monitoring unit to follow up on that when they do their annual monitoring visit to ensure that any issues have been corrected and that there have been new procedures or processes put in place to avoid it occurring in the future. And what we will do, we'll provide any kind of technical assistance to any career planners or the LWIS and training just to help clarify any procedures or trade rules that need to be clarified, or any kind of help that you need to help you get into compliance. So what kind of things do we review during a monitoring? So Dceo staff, so the first component and the third component, these are the items on a kind of a general basis of what we're going to review, an overview of the main topics. We're going to look at eligibility documentation, kind of review the dates and any kind of supporting documentation you have regarding eligibility for that participant for the program. We're going to look at the trade forms, make sure they're completed, they're signed, they're, all the boxes are marked and everything is completed that matches what you have in IWDS related to that participant. We're going to look at any assessments that have been conducted for that participant, make sure that that information is in IWDS, especially the test scores and any kind of other assessments that have been conducted doesn't match what you say in the system. We're going to check training enrollment information, the forms, the documentation to ensure it's all in compliance. Are your case notes up to date? Do you have all of the case notes in for the biweekly attendance? Have you put case notes in for the progression of the participant through the program? Are you keeping up on those? Are you maintaining contact with that participant? We're going to review service and status entries in IWDS to make sure they're correct and appropriate for what's happening with that participant. Make sure you have merit staff approvals for the items that you need to have approvals for. Make sure your attendance is documented in the file and in case notes. And if there's any breaks in training that need to be entered, make sure that those are entered. Potential suspension requests, vacation breaks, payable training interruptions, PSRs if there's any, ceased participations. If someone has ceased participation, is it entered? Have they not submitted their attendance timely? Is there a ceased participation in there for that attendance sheet that's missing? Make sure that you are providing active services. As we covered before, you have to provide active services or within a 90-day period, or the person should be exited unless there's some sort of circumstances why. Some planned gap in service. Are you entering your credentials and measurable skills gains? Are your travel reimbursements accurate? They're being paid at the right rate. They're paid at the right amount. Do you have documentation supporting the dates of travel? Is there attendance sheets supporting the dates that you have paid for travel? And are you exiting people in a timely manner as appropriate? That's just kind of an overview of the main topics and things that are covered. There's a lot of specific questions, regarding each particular type of training that is asked. If it's an OJT or if there's job search or velo, or if it's an ATAA, RTAA, special things under that. But we will look at those particular services and make sure all of that information is in there. And on a local level, there is oversight monitoring that is required as well. So you as an LWIA are required to monitor your trade participant files annually to make sure that the eligibility, ensure eligibility is correct for that person. They are eligible for the program and everything, and make sure that you're in compliance with trade rules and regulations, both on the Trade Act rules and any Dceo policies and procedures that are in place. So, monitoring activities, that includes just a review of the eligibility documentation, any forms, your evidence of any ongoing eligibility for services, such as TRA, ATAA, RTAA, attendance forms, IWDS entries, payments, any payments made to training institutions, if they're, accurate, and that participants are in compliance with trade rules and regulations. So it's just kind of that's some of the activities that can be used, is similar to what I just showed on the previous slide about what we look at. If the LWIA needs training or guidance from Dceo or IWDS trade staff, definitely reach out to us. We will be glad to assist you and help you with any kind of training or guidance. That's what we're here for. We're all on the same team. We're all here to help. We want what's best for the participant. So please reach out if you've got any questions. You can use the tool that we have, or you can do your own form to do your review. And if we ask for your monitoring tool, then, it must be made available for any review by Dceo staff if we ask for it. And you must also ensure that any staff that are administering the trade program and or WIOA, that they attend training as necessary for them, and that they know where to find state and federal guidance on the program so that they can get the assistance they needed if they need some help with something or need to just research a rule or regulation on the program. So how do we resolve any kind of findings from a monitoring? Subrecipient level findings, that would be findings to you that we have issued to you because you are a subrecipient of us. So Dceo itself is responsible for resolving any findings that arise from the monitoring reviews, investigations, and other federal monitoring reviews and audits of any subrecipients that we have. That's you guys. We have to use written monitoring and audit resolution procedures that we use for other federal programs. So we have those written procedures. And for subrecipients awarded funds through a recipient of grant funds, and that is you, the direct recipient of the grant funds must have written monitoring and resolution processes that are in place. That's us. We are the direct recipient. So we do have written monitoring procedures and resolution procedures that are in compliance with the 2 CFR Part 200. So if the state, we the state are monitored. So DOL is responsible for resolving any findings that they issue to us. They'll use their audit resolution process that they have, and they'll make a final determination from their grant officer. And we as a state can appeal to that finding if we so choose. And this is just how they resolve their findings to us. So that's all the monitoring. That's really all the presentation. So there's your helpful websites again. Here's your trade contacts at Dceo. There's the IDS trade unit contacts. This is not all of the people at IDS. There are more people they have hired, but these are the main contacts and their phone number. Do not give their email addresses out to any participant, please. They're not allowed to communicate with participants via email because they're not able to verify their identity apparently. And they also have had some issues with threats against them, just from the mere fact I think that they work at IWDS. So just be mindful that do not give out their email addresses to any participants. Just give them their phone number, please. And as far as trade training goes, if you have any type of training that you want to have, please reach out to us. We will be glad to put something together. The training that we have conducted, the recordings, the presentations, and any materials are posted at this site. I did have asked David Garvey to put the chat information in there from December 14th and 16th as of this morning. I also noticed that the chat was not there for one of the other previous trainings on waivers on November 4th, so I've asked him to upload that. I also sent him the information from today's training to upload as well, and we will get the chats. Kirsten is going to send the chat to us from Thursday, just 2 days ago, Tuesday and today, as soon as we're done, or whenever, sometime today, and we will get those all tweaked and answer the questions that were answered, and then we'll get those posted as well. So that's it. Does anybody have any other questions? Chat, let's check. Okay.
I don't think there is, Sheila.
All right. Well, I do want to thank you, Kirsten, for all of your efforts during this whole series of training presentations. I know we adjusted the schedule several times, so I appreciate all of your efforts on that, and I apologize for us having to do that. And I appreciate everyone who's attended for being flexible and adjusting your schedules accordingly based on how we adjusted our schedule. Thank you for attending, and I want to thank the trade unit staff, Susan Boggs, Crystal Bigelow, and Lori Graham for helping me make these presentations and gather documents and have input into the materials that we have put together. And I hope that everyone has found them to be beneficial. I hope you use them going forward. Please reach out if you do find something that isn't matching up exactly as it says in the documents that we have provided as far as the instructions go when you're working through these, because we will make changes and update them if there is an error or a correction that needs to be made. So other than that, I think that's it. And I don't know what you guys are going to do on your Thursdays now that you don't have to listen to me talk for a while. All right, I guess that's it. We'll see everyone later.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.